learn some nutrition and things, and I put this into this course, you know, and at the end of it, this person came up to me and she told me that this was the finest work of its kind, she said. And she said, I've been all over the place. I've been to India, and I've been all over. And she said, I've never sat at the feet of someone who's explained the things about behaviour, such as you know. And then she said, but you know what, you're bound to have limited, and she sort of put limited over here. Then she said, success. To me. She told me that I was bound to have limited success. And just by the way she said it, I knew she knew more about something than I did. Far more. Whoa. So I didn't know what it was, but she just had said that to me. She said it so surely that it was a feeling of a trust of something. And so I felt a bit silent in myself, and she asked me a question. And I just listened to myself for a moment in answering this. And whilst I was listening to myself, something I could feel wasn't right. I was thinking to myself, how come I don't know more about this? You know, it's quite weird. How come I don't know more about this, you see? And she asked me a question. Her name is Grace Agana, and she happens to be a very old, one of Anne Rickmore's oldest friends, and both of them were in their 50s when Anne started, you know, and so Grace, she was running all the tissue cleansing and things at Esalen when I was there, and I was doing a training with all the staff. So she just says to me, asks me about enzymes. Did I know the value of enzymes? Well, when I went back to New York, I had perhaps, you know, maybe 30 books, which was to do with nutrition and things, you know. And I burned all of them except for 3, because they were so wrong. I couldn't believe how wrong they were. And I just kept 3 which were also quite wrong, but had some statistics and some things in there that I could possibly use as research. So, you know, I think I'm not going to say anything that you don't already know, that most everyone's here is already aware of the value of enzymes, yes? Yes, you are. Well, so I have a very scientific mind, and my training more is in research and as a scientist. And so when something is said, it's possible for me to analyse that in an instant for the type of validity, if any validity exists in the statement, and whether or not the statement is reliable or not. The kinds of... First we can have just face validity. This just making sense. Makes sense. So that's face validity. That's the strongest type of validity that exists. Statistical validity is worth jack nothing. If it doesn't make sense to you, like the idea about antibodies. So confusing. Weird as hell. The AIDS virus does not exist. But that's another story. So we have types of validity. And we have a face validity. It just makes sense to you. And this is the most powerful form of validity. Then there is another type of validity, various other forms of validity, which each one of these could be satisfied, or 2 or 3 of them could be satisfied, but at least 2 or 3 should be satisfied for something to be a bit more valid if you're using Aristotelian logic. So the second type of validity is called construct validity, meaning something that's said is based upon a construct. So that's called constructive living. Then you could say things and you could put it into a context. And in this context, this is what occurs. And always within this context, these are the things that's happening. So this is called contextual validity. And then there's other forms of validity as well. But then anything that's said has to be able to be repeatable. Form of validity means that if this is so, then it must be able to be replicatable. It must be able to be shown to be so by seeing this is the way things are. This is contextual, putting things into a context, and then our sense of validity that comes from this contextually. And then the facts and things that's being presented to you are reliable, are repeatable. So there is no such thing as any experiments that have been done with vaccination as being scientific. They are not. Any piece of research that's done on a pharmaceutical or anything that's to do with the pharmaceutical industry can be totally undone fast because it's not scientific, not at all. And it can be shown to be so that it is not scientific. So we're sort of led to believe perhaps that because somebody's in a white lab coat and they're holding up a syringe with a white lab coat, they're holding up a syringe and they're telling you and I that they have improved upon babies. It'd be just as weird as someone holding up an apple and saying, as a chef, I have improved upon the apple in the kitchen. We can't improve upon an apple, and we can't improve upon baby, and we can't improve a plant. We can't bypass nature, and when we do, we make very serious errors. This which is left smelt is not raw food. Right? Certainly not. I've never used the word. Why? Because the more you go to France and other places like that, the more people eating raw flesh from horses, raw eggs, raw fish. You know, raw could be undigestible as a telegraph pole. Right? So raw is just unprocessed. You know. It's not a good word because people are using it in a whole range of to mean just simply perhaps something unprocessed. But it's not the primary principle. There's a finer principle. It's called life. It's called live. Life. Something either has life or it doesn't. And if you're like me, you're thinking to yourself, we can't improve upon nature, can you? But then, if we eat something that can't grow itself, could that not cause you to have a question? If we eat something that can't grow itself, could there be problems with that? Because it just can't reproduce itself, right? Like corn, like wheat, like a banana, like dates. It cannot reproduce itself, like carrot. It cannot reproduce itself. Well, it was only a very short while that I became introduced to Anne back then that I became Anne's scientific advisor. Because it was a short while that I had examined her, everything she was doing,